I want 2 boy sandwiches, one with oysters, the other with shrimp, and 2 sweet teas, the woman said. You will really like how the fights are prepared here. And the price is also suitable. When they make sweet tea, it actually needs to be served with an injection of insulin. But it's still a popular drink. I think he's popular where you come from, too, right? In the village. Oh, yes, I think it's the same thing all over Louisiana, Bonnie said. Sylvia, I can buy my own food, but I'm grateful to you. Money is tight. I wasn't prepared for the fact that this damn city is so expensive. No, I asked you out for a reason. But I'll get to that, Sylvia replied. Let's sit by the window while we wait for food. They'll bring it to us. All right, I have to confess. I'm really curious what you're doing here. We've been going out for lunch every couple of days for the last month and talking about almost everything. But you've never told me your story. I didn't even hint at it. I'm going to burst with curiosity. What do you mean? Bonnie asked, as Tony's assistant. I know you've read my resume. I'm not that naive. You know everything about me. Where I come from, my education, my work history, almost everything except my bra size. And you probably know that. We're talking about all sorts of nonsense. What don't you know? I'm sorry, girl. That's not what I meant, Sylvia said. Over the years, I've seen Tony being my cousin and all hire different people from time to time. And the fact is, he was really looking for someone like Richard with his skills and knowledge of the insurance business. He was okay, and he was lucky to have found Richard. But Richard insisted that you be hired too, as a condition of his acceptance of the position. When I heard that, I told Tony that you were probably some useless cheater Rich was making. Love tea. I'm sorry, girl. That's not what I meant, Sylvia said. Over the years, I've been Tony, being my cousin and all, hired different people from time to time. On how fact is, he was really looking for someone like Richard, with his skills and knowledge of the insurance business. It was okay, and he was lucky to have found Richard. But Richard insisted that you be hired too, as a condition of his acceptance of the position. When I heard that, I told Tony that you were probably some useless cheater Rich was making. Love too. Like give my girlfriend a job to make her feel good. We knew you used to work for him. But damn it, girl, you're damn good on your own. You've turned over this little clerical job. That's the 3rd week here, and Tony trusts you with the bills for work like never before. And now you're in charge of this department. And this isn't just a couple of months. And I admit, I don't like to do this, but I'm not just Tony's assistant. I have a little more authority. I own part of the company. Agnosto Shipping Company was founded by my grandfather. He left it to his son. And I admit, I don't like the dots, but I'm not just Tony's assistant. I have a little more authority. I own part of the company. Agnosto Shipping Company was founded by my grandfather. He left it to his son and daughter, my mom and uncle, Tony's father. Tony, since he is my cousin and boyfriend, is in charge. At least he has the title of boss on the letterhead of the company. This is a loose interpretation, as is the fact that he is called a guy.
A formality.
I know you've caught on that. He's gay. You should have heard him say that. People stutter and try to be politically correct. And he's just laughing at his ass. In any case, my responsibilities include more than just being a secretary. And I just want to know what's the matter. I had a lot more responsibility in my last job, Bonnie explained. Yes, I was working for Rich back then. So when we lost her, we wanted to stay close. I'm sure you've noticed that we have the same address. Sylvia said, yes, I'll tell you, we're struggling to make ends meet. Well, the rent in New Orleans is just crazy. Bonnie said, we've already looked everywhere. All the way to Meadery near the airport. Driving on I-10 is a real pain. Listen, girl, I know that, Sylvia said. If you want to save some money, go north of the city. Move there. It won't save you a lot of money, but it's better and safer to live there. You should have seen where Tony lives. Down the block. It looks like shit from the street, but behind his door, girl, this place is just gorgeous. He even has a thin girl. I know that, Sylvia said. If you want to save some money, go north of the city. Move there. It won't save you a lot of money, but it's better and safer to live there. You should have seen where Tony lives. Down the block. It looks like shit from the street, but behind his door, girl, this place is just gorgeous. He even has a small courtyard. Of course, he and his partner bought it quite a long time ago, but now these places are selling for 3 or 4 million.
The rent is very high there.
And you have to watch yourself when you walk down the street. Don't think for a minute that Nolan's is just a party center. In general, I want to tell you, don't wear these jewelry. Sylvia said bluntly. I see that these are not trinkets. This is real shit. Someone will see him and target you. They'll get him. The problem is how badly you're going to get hurt when they do. It's better to leave this shit at home and maybe even under lock and key. My husband has a gun safe. I keep my good stuff in it. I like you. I don't want you to get hurt. Okay, let's go back to what I was talking about a few minutes ago. I see that you used to have money, but now you live here and you don't have it. So will you tell me the real story? Sylvia asked. I know I grew up only 100 miles away, but you're still a country girl. Big change. Huh. Holy shit. Bonnie said, it's like living on the other side of the planet. I mean, I've been to New Orleans many times over the years, but usually to play on the block, on Bourbon Street. Or when my family, holy shit. Bonnie said, it's like living on the other side of the planet. I mean, I've been to New Orleans many times over the years, usually to play on the block, on Bourbon Street. Or when my family went on a cruise from the port, my family in Riches. Good. This requires an explanation. See. Okay. If you want to know my story, it's all personal. I'll tell you. Riches. Or was my brother-in-law. And yes, now he's my boyfriend, lover. Or whatever label you want to put on him. Bonnie said, a son-in-law, a former boss, and now a boyfriend. Sylvia asked, girlfriend. I'm just dying to hear all this. Go back and start from the beginning. And don't worry about the time. While we're doing our job, we'll be able to take as much time as we need. Tony won't say a word. Good. If you really want to know, I met my ex-husband right after graduating from high school. I was at a party with my friend Susan, and her brother came home from college for the summer holidays. He was there good. If you really want to know, I met my ex-husband right after graduating from high school. I was at a party with my friend Susan, and her brother came home from college for the summer holidays. He was there too, at the party. I kind of knew him, saw him around. But I never really talked to him, except to say hi. He was a few years older, so we didn't talk at school. Anyway, he was cute, and I liked him. So when he asked me out, I immediately agreed. On the third date, we made love. It was my first time, and since I didn't plan to have a WI. First time, and since I didn't plan to an active sex life, I didn't take anything. And Rob didn't use a condom. The very next moment, I got pregnant. My parents were furious. I would have thought so. So you stayed a virgin until you graduated from high school? Sylvia asked, clearly surprised. Bonnie laughed. Is that all you've learned from this? I mean, yes, I got pregnant right away and from the first guy. I've only had sex with 2 guys in my life. My ex-husband and Rich. I've only kissed a little bit on dates before. Rich was at home after college, too. Rich was at home after college, too. He was a friend of Rob's, and Rob introduced him to his sister. They got along, and then they got engaged. Rob and Sue's family had a construction company, and the old man, his grandfather, owned a bunch of real estate in the area. He gave Rob and Sue lots of land on the bay and built us very beautiful houses. Well, I built them houses. Since they got the houses before we got married, the houses belonged to them and were registered only in their names. But we haven't paid our mortgage for almost 18 years. We only had insurance, utilities, and all that. So, my dad is a doctor. He was very upset about my pregnancy. I overheard him telling my mom that Rob was a womanizer. He decided that Rob had taken advantage of me and would probably start cheating on me sooner or later. So, he forced us to sign a very strict prenuptial agreement. The cheating party must leave the marriage after receiving only 20% of the total property. Rob's father liked the idea of a prenup, so he copied it for Rich and Sue. I had a baby boy, and a few months later, Sue had one. It was a little difficult the first year. Rob had a year left in college, but both pairs of our parents helped us, and he graduated. Then I got pregnant again. Sue got pregnant around the same time. I had a daughter, and she had twins. Rich had a good job at an insurance company in the city center. He earned good money. Rob returned to college and graduated as a nurse. My father was also upset by this. He tried to persuade Rob to go to Medich, had a good job at an insurance company in the city center. He earned good money. Rob returned to college and graduated as a nurse. My father was also upset by this. He tried. What about Rich? Is he a city guy? Sylvia asked. Or does he go to the swamps? Oh, he went with us for a while. You need to have a couple of adults to look after 5 small children in the swamp if you want them back safe and sound. But he wasn't very interested. He preferred trips to Disneyland, cruises, and the like. Rob loved that kind of thing too. We spent at least one big vacation every year. We could afford it. When the kids started school, Sue and I started taking college courses. She became a paralegal and I got a job with Rich. So what made you go to bed with Rich? Did you get drunk when the swamp boy was out with the kids? Sylvia asked. No. In fact, everything was slow. Since we lived next door and worked in the same office, we didn't see the point in taking 2 cars. So we drove together. While we were driving, we started chatting about everything in the world. I mean about everything. Current events, politics, work, anything. I think that was our communication. We were more than just relatives. We were close friends. We even often went to lunch together. At home, Rob and I mostly talked about family matters. He worked a 12-hour shift 3 or 4 days a week. So at this time, most of his free time was occupied by sleep. HHA, Sylvia exclaimed.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
I mean, 3 or 4 times a week. Everything was fine in that regard, Bonnie said. Well, if everything was so good at home in terms of bed, why did you and Rich start doing dirty things? Sylvia asked, grinning now. Like I said, everything went slowly. We mostly talked, Bonnie said. We knew almost everything that happened in each other's houses. I mean, it was like one big family going back and forth between 2 houses. Sometimes we talked about the little irritations that arise between spouses. For example, Rob believes that socializing is drinking beer with a backyard barbecue. He only had one suit, and I had to work hard to get him to wear a tie. He wore a medical gown at work and jeans at home. Sue was a little better. She dressed according to the dress code, and there were social gatherings at the law firm. Rich and I loved the cocktail party environment. We also enjoyed dancing. We both grew up attending the country club and its events. His father was a stockbroker and always played golf. So is my father. I like this social life. A few years ago, after a small quarrel at home, Rich said that we fit each other better than he and Sue. He said he almost wished he had married her instead of me. I think it was a turning point, Bonnie said. We weren't in love, but we flirted a little. And when we were driving to and from work, our life together became the subject of discussion. At first, it was more like talking about what kind of couple we would be than anything else. Then it turned into how we can do it so that our spouses don't find out about it. We knew that our spouses would kill us if they caught us doing this. And literally, Rob is not a very big guy and has never been violent. I've never heard of him getting into a fight, but I have no doubt that he would have killed anyone who threatened his family. Anyway, the flirting turned into small kisses and we decided to take the next step. We were very careful not to even hint that there was more between us than just a family relationship. But a little more than 2 years ago, an insurance conference was held here in the Hilton Hotel in the city. You know, in the block right by the river. Rich and I participated in it. We shared a room. Of course, without telling our spouses about it, all expenses were paid by the company. So they would never have seen the bill and would not have known how the place was booked. At the conference, we behaved like ordinary employees of the same office. We went to Bourbon Street with others, attended a banquet, and the like. But they were careful not to touch each other, not in public. But we were fucking touching each other in our room. It was a little awkward at first, but it didn't last long. That's what I want to hear about, Sylvia said. Hey, I've had enough sweet tea. Let's go down the street to that little bar. They serve excellent daiquiris, or you can order a hurricane. At least they're no worse than Pat Aubrey's. So tell me, was making love to Rich better than making love to your hubby? Now Sylvia was laughing. What we were doing was so wrong. Something forbidden. But it's so exciting. To tell the truth, that's probably what got me hooked. Both women giggled for a few seconds. What Rich and I did on that trip was making love. I felt a little guilty for what we were doing when I returned home. I more or less lashed out at Rob. She used him roughly. He liked it, but he never understood why I was so wild. I said that I was aroused because I was far from home, and he had no doubt about it. I did all the same things I did with Rich. So it was more than 2 years ago. Sylvia asked, how did you handle things when you got home? Without getting caught. I mean, sooner or later, someone would have noticed that you were living in a motel. You said that you both have ironclad marriage contracts that will crucify you and leave you with almost nothing if you were caught cheating. Why take the risk? Why not just get a divorce and then go about your business? You were still young. Then you could move on together. Maybe even have 1 or 2 more children. Not an option. Not really, Bonnie said. We talked about it. The only thing that really stopped us was the children. At that time, I had a 14-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. Rich's twins were 14 and his first son was 15. If we had divorced, I would probably have been allowed to live in a house with children. I could let Rich move in, but his children would live next door to Sue. We bet she let Rob move in with her so he could be closer to the kids. Rob would pay me a little alimony and Rich would pay Sue a little more because there are more children. Plus, he would probably have to pay alimony for his wife since he earned more than she did. So all that would change is that the men would move next door and Rob and Sue wouldn't get any love making from Rich and me. It would turn into a war zone. We did not think that they would be able to convince the judge that we had cheated in any way before the divorce. The prenuptial agreement specifies the requirement of proof, but we didn't want to risk losing our common property. So we decided to just keep our relationship on the side. We could do this for 4 years until the kids grow up and leave home, Bonnie suggested. Then we had the idea to start hiding money so that we would have a reserve in case we leave our spouses. We couldn't figure out how we could steal money from our family accounts without Rob and Bonnie finding out. In any case, some significant amount. Rich came up with a way by giving everyone in the office bonuses for excellent work. The rest of the employees were very pleased and worked even harder when they found out that bonuses for the entire office were a real opportunity. Rob and I took our bonuses and hid them in savings accounts in Baton Rouge. We didn't tell our spouses about this. Of course, we had to pay taxes on these incomes, so that year we instructed an accountant whom Rich knew to hide our taxes. We made sure that we paid enough to receive a refund of the same amount as a year earlier. The declarations were filed electronically and Rob never looked at ours. And then we did it again the next year. We were thinking about the idea of investing money, but it would create a big paper trail. In addition, brokers usually call you, and this could be a way in which we could be caught. We decided that let the money just quietly and bring interest. We used the office as the address. We set it up for online access, but we didn't even want to receive monthly statements by email in case they were found. As I said, we've been looking at all the ways to cover our tracks. After the second year, we had over $250,000 in these accounts, Bonnie said, and her voice was a little sad now. We assumed that by the time all the children left the house and we filed for divorce, we would double this amount. You know that divorce lawyers look for these things, Sylvia said. My first husband had a secret bank account, but we found it right away. I got a him and got my half. I know, Bonnie said, but usually the search is based on current or recent accounts using a social security number. We decided that we would close the accounts 6 months before applying, and Rob and Susan would never find them. In order to pay extra money for more in-depth research, they must have some reason to suspect something. Now, to cover up the affair itself, Rich rented a furnished apartment. We would take long lunches or leave work early and go there. Yeah, don't look at me like that. It's true, Bonnie said. Of course, he did not rent it in his own name, but used the services of the company. Other offices across the country keep places for visiting officials, so there was money in the corporate budget. When he applied, no one asked him any questions. I don't think we've had a single visitor who would want to stay in this apartment. We kept several changes of clothes, toiletries, and of course, a set of cosmetics there. I always made sure that everything was clean after us. No look betrayed me. Besides, we used to do this when Rob was at work, or in the swamp, or fishing. We never held hands or touched each other in public. Rich didn't even open the door for me. As I said, we were careful. And you were caught anyway, Sylvia suggested. Have you ever figured out where you messed up? How did your husband and sister-in-law catch you? They just sued you, and you didn't even know they had suspicions. It was a nightmare. Bonnie said, we were caught with our pants down, literally, but we didn't know that at the time. If you can get the bartender's attention, order us another round. I'm going to need it. Okay, it was about 4.5 months ago when this guy came to the office. I remember it because of what we did later. It was Thursday afternoon. He said he had come to see Mr. Richard Jenkins and Bonnie Fontano. Rich and I were going to lunch, so we told him it was us and asked him what he needed. He just smiled and said, "You have been served?" I must have had a very stupid expression on my face in the photo he took because I was completely shocked. That's how we found out that Rich and Sue have filed for divorce. Rich and I talked about it and decided that Sue and Rich were just reacting to some kind of rumor. There was such a joke at work, which has been around the office several times over the years, that Rich is my husband. Our spouses would be fools if they reacted to it. It pissed me off, but Rich just thought they were forcing us to do it. So we have to agree. Maybe it's not that bad. In this state, any reason is enough for a divorce. We knew they wouldn't have proof of cheating, so a prenup wouldn't be a problem. We will receive half of the property. We were in the same boat as at the beginning of our romance. But now we have hidden money. Plus, we could blame the divorce on Rob and Sue to look like child victims. We would still have 2 years of living at home, and we would be able to save even more money from bonuses. It was only later that I realized that my reaction to submitting the application was completely wrong. I should have called Rob and cried, pretending to be offended and innocent, claiming that he had reacted to empty rumors. Instead, I called him a fool and a few other nicknames, and told him I'd got him. I went a little overboard when I said I would find a boyfriend, and it might even be Rich. I said rather rudely that I would let the guy have all my holes. I kind of expected Rich to start bleeding or defending himself. Maybe even rant and rave. It scared me a little when he calmly told me to hire a lawyer and that he made the children pack our things. So at least the children were told what was going on. At least that's what Rob and Sue knew or thought they knew.
It sounds like a mess.
Sylvia said, just like that, out of the blue. Yes, Rich called an old fraternity mate, and he told us to go straight to the bank and take half the money. We found out that Rob and Sue have already taken 80%. Boudreaux said we could get our share back in court. He asked us a couple of times if there was any evidence at all that we had made love. We stood our ground and told him that there were none. I knew Rich had told him that we actually did it, but as our lawyer, Boudreaux couldn't say a word about what he knew. He only cared about what could be proved. When we returned home, we found that all our things were lying on the lawn. Suitcases, boxes, plastic garbage bags, whatever you want to call it, they were packed. We had a hard time getting it all into our cars. My car was parked in the garage since Rich had left, so I spread out the back seat and started loading things. No matter how I stuffed things in, there were more of them than my car could hold. I had to put some in my car. The deputy took me inside to see if there was anything else left. My daughter was walking beside me because Rob had instructed her to keep an eye on me so that I wouldn't take anything but my personal belongings. I tried to tell her that it was all nonsense. She got mad at me. She didn't say a word. She just looked at me and shook her head. Rob said he would keep all my jewelry until we sorted out our possessions, which almost pissed me off. But Boudreaux assured me again that they were all cataloged and I would receive them later. Getting into the car to leave, I was completely confused. I could barely drive. I was crying so much. It was a combination of anger and humiliation. You weren't stupid enough to go to that apartment, were you? Sylvia asked. That would prove them right. No. Rich has already talked about this with Boudreaux. I followed them to the Holiday Inn, Bonnie said. They thought we were being followed. We took 2 beds and straightened both of them to make it look like we were sleeping separately. Boudreaux said Rob could hire an investigator. We also tried not to mess up. We all thought that cameras might be installed later when they found out where we were staying. Even if we were caught doing this, it would still be considered adultery if we talk about the prenuptial agreement. This part was difficult. I wanted Rich to at least hug me, but he decided to ensure that we wouldn't be tempted to get carried away. Gee, Sylvia commented. So it was Thursday afternoon. Well, you had the next day plus the weekend to start getting yourself in order. I applied for my first husband late on Friday evening. It's too late to talk to a lawyer or even go to the bank. He had to spend the whole weekend without any money, except for a small amount that was in his wallet. I've already taken my half out of the bank and canceled all my credit cards to make fun of him and even blocked the ATM card. That weekend, he had to find a place to sleep and borrow money for food and drinks. He was so angry. He came into the house, cornered me, and threatened me in front of Tony, who decided to stay with me for the weekend. But I underestimated Tony because he's gay. Tony kicked his ass and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Sylvia laughed out loud. My ex was scared to death. He wondered if Tony had links to organized crime. After that, the worm never said a single bad word to me. Not to his face, anyway. Bonnie giggled. I bet it was nice. But in any case, we were the only ones we contacted. Rich found out that our credit cards had been canceled when he tried to book us a hotel room. Boudreaux told us to start listing all the assets we could think of. And if we have money hidden that Rob and Sue don't know about, grab it and hide it. We boarded a red flight to Grand Cayman after we stopped by the office to get the account numbers and password for our Baton Rouge accounts. Ah, so you took out this money. And since it hasn't been 6 months since your divorce hearing, don't go near them, Sylvia said. You don't want your yucks to get to them. Mine was watching me, thinking I had hidden the money. The only real asset at that time was my shares in Agnosto Shipping, and he still couldn't get a penny out of them. That's the problem. There was no more money. We have $5 left. Enough to keep the accounts open, Bonnie said, her voice breaking a little with emotion. Oh, damn it, Sylvia exclaimed. You said that you had more than $250,000. Did your ex find them and take them away? Heck. But you should be able to pay back 20%. I'm guessing he found evidence of an affair? Yes, I found it. But as for the money, he took it or Sue took it. But they didn't get it. Let me tell you how it happened, Bonnie said. We were sitting at the Royal National Bank of Cayman. We just opened an account with a small cash reserve. The account manager entered all the BIC and account numbers for the electronic transfer. I entered my passwords. The response was a refusal. We tried to open both accounts 3 times. Rich was swearing at me that I must have written down the wrong password. He said we should go home and transfer the money from there. Later, he apologized and said that he did it because he was embarrassed and did not want to look like an idiot in front of the banker. I took a picture with my phone. I knew I had the right password. We arrived home completely depressed. We had to wait until the following Monday to personally go to the bank and find that the money was gone. They were transferred a week before. The bank said that all passwords and authentication questions were entered correctly. We have asked for an investigation. We couldn't figure out how Rob could get the account number and password. The only written copy was in our office. When we came to the hearing a couple of days later, this asshole made claims to us about hidden accounts. That's when we found out that he was tracking our movements and how. Let me guess. Either he or Rich's wife heard the rumor and hired a private investigator, Sylvia suggested. No. It's a simple app on my mobile phone, Bonnie said. Sylvia exclaimed loudly. That's the kind of shit. All of us adults have mobile phones connected to our children's phones. We did this to see where the children are at all times. At the hearing, Rob stated that the children tried to contact us. but we were offline. Later, they saw that we were not on the coast and followed us to the international airport. And Meadery. He said they checked the incoming flights and saw one of them from the Caymans. He was absolutely right about all this. But I know that this is a complete setup for a court employee. Everything we said there was recorded. A court official said he would launch an investigation. At the divorce hearing itself, we learned that all the money had been transferred to the accounts of the children's trust funds. We've opened college accounts or something for all the kids. Most of the money was invested by their grandparents, and we added a little. But now all the $280,000 that we had hidden were evenly distributed among the 5 children. Wow, that's right. Sylvia said, did they find a way to trick you? You couldn't even keep 20% for yourself. You couldn't get them back. No. Rob and Sue didn't get anything out of it either. They're in court. The judge said that he thought it was very generous that Rich and I gave the money to the children. We knew it was complete nonsense. Boudreaux has already warned us that it is illegal to hide money so that a spouse does not receive it. And with the amounts we're talking about, it was a criminal offense, so we have to be very careful what we say. We realized that the judge was giving us a way out. He said the deal would remain valid unless it was fraudulent. We couldn't declare it without incriminating ourselves. We were totally fucked. Therefore, everything was allowed to take its course. We knew what we had done, or rather tried to do, and the judge knew it too. Rob, Sue, and the children left the courtroom. The bailiff talked to Boudreaux and said that the judge wanted to see us in his office. He said he was going to talk to us off the record. He said he knew our parents, our fathers, anyway. Therefore, he said what he said and hinted that we should not dispute the transfer of money to our children. He looked at Rich and me and said, I don't think a refund of 20% of $120,000 and $160,000, respectively, is worth 3 or 4 years of your life in prison. Is it? Let's check our heads. Rich later admitted that he almost fainted. I even peed a little. We knew that the judge knew everything about what we were trying to do. Rob accused us in front of that court official, so it's already been put in the witness statement. The investigation they conducted even indicated attempts to transfer money to the Grand Cayman Bank. Damn it, Sylvia exclaimed. Not only a prison sentence, but also a charge of a serious crime would spoil your whole future. No way, Bonnie said. We were lucky. It's good that we got a judge who wanted justice, not a verdict. Our lawyer, Boudreaux, was not so good. At the first hearing, Rob's lawyer accused Boudreaux of advising Rich and me to commit a crime. The judge played an audio recording of this conversation. None of us had any idea where he got it from, but it was us in that hotel room. By the time it was over, Boudreaux had been punished by the state bar. He was asked to pay a fine of $10,000 or not be able to practice for 6 months. That day in the judge's office, he just knew he was in serious trouble. As soon as we got outside, he started swearing and ranting about Rob. Why the fuck would he want to make love to me? He kept saying I could have told him, but I needed to stay by his side. He continued to call Rob Aribert using the Cajun pronunciation. Rob hated everyone except his older relative, like his mom, who called him that. Rich said that although he always got along well with Boudreaux, Rob hated his ass. It happened because of bullying back in school. Boudreaux and his football buddies dominated the rest of the guys. I'm telling some of this out of order so you'll understand what's going on, Bonnie said. When we found out that Rob was tracking our movements during the first meeting, we realized that he already knew about the apartment. Of course, we found out that a certain guy asked the manager who rented our apartment. She said the guy said Rich was suspected of dealing illegal substances and keeping cheating girls. I think she used the term human trafficking. The man said that the FBI, D, and a bunch of other agencies alphabetically would be around if she didn't cooperate. Now they knew about the apartment. We knew Rob had suspicions, but we didn't think he had any real evidence. Now we knew that at least he knew about the apartment. Boudreaux invited the guy to check the apartment for bugs and cameras. We watched as the guy waved the device around the apartment, but found nothing. Have you checked your personal belongings? Sylvia asked. I mean, it would be easy to put a listening device in one of the suitcases or bags when the children were packing your things. That might explain how they heard what you said at the motel. Later, we thought about it, but we didn't find anything. The guy who did the check said he could only find active bugs, Bonnie said. We still thought we were safe. I mean, in order for the prenuptial agreement to take effect, they needed absolute proof of adultery. If less, then the division will be 50-50. I would have gotten custody of the children anyway. Boudreaux assured me that I could trade on the main street and keep my children. Besides, I'd get alimony from Rob, and I could stay in the house until Deirdre turned 18. The situation wasn't perfect, but it was. You won't believe how everything turned to shit in the courtroom, Bonnie said. The judge just told me all about the money coming into the children's accounts. As soon as he mentioned that custody would be the next issue, my daughter Deirdre raised her hand and started asking questions about what she had read on the internet and whether she could choose the parent she would live with. She wanted to live with Rob. Rich's daughter also stood up and said she wanted to stay with her mom. Deirdre even asked about how to become emancipated and live independently, since she has enough money. Then the other children stood up and announced that they were all leaving and would live together. I'm telling you, I was so confused and hurt. The judge looked like he was going to burst out laughing and said something like that. It seems that if he does not agree with what the children want, they will insist on their own. That's how Rich explained it to me later. I was too busy trying to figure out that my kids didn't want me. Oh, damn it. It would suck to hear from your children that they don't want to live with you, Sylvia said. I was ready to cry. I could barely contain myself when they started talking about the evidence of adultery, and Rob took out some photos, Bonnie said. I was ready to panic. My lawyer said something about Photoshop and that these photos don't prove anything. From what I glimpsed, they looked real. Rob said he had a video, but he wanted the kids to leave until they turned it on. My daughter told him that there was nothing wrong with what he had and that some videos were even worse. How did she know? I stared at her in shock. Then Rich's daughter, Cindy, loudly announced that there was a video of me bending over, taking him in the ass and hooting like an owl. The kids started laughing, but then I realized that they had all the evidence in the world. That Rich and I had made love, Bonnie said. My world has collapsed. So when you're being used, you hoot like an owl, Sylvia asked, laughing. She sounded like she wasn't even trying to contain her mirth. Because of adultery, Rob got his 80% of everything, Bonnie said quietly. He got full custody. And because of the additional income from bonuses, I had to pay him alimony in addition to child support. Rich was also badly hurt. The same alimony, but more. Damn, girl. No wonder you kept quiet about your story and the divorce. It can't be worse than what you've been through. Sylvia said, so you've lost on all counts. Do you think so? Bonnie said sourly. You were supposed to be at a meeting next week where we had to decide who would get which item. Rich's wife, Sue, said we got off too easy on child support, and they're going to appeal. They were going to demand 3 times more than we had to pay. Boudreaux has already told us that we pay the minimum amount based on our income, and that we do not anger them. Otherwise, they can appeal the decision. Sue said that if we want to stop them from appealing, we have to walk through the whole city almost naked with signs saying that we are cheaters. Really? Sylvia asked. Oh yes, Bonnie replied sullenly. She looked at my face and grinned. Then she whispered that I could get down and kiss her ass and beg, and she could change her mind. Did she ask you to kiss her ass? For real? Sylvia asked, laughing. That's what she said. And I'm sure she would have made me do it if we were alone. She was so crazy. I saw that everything I wanted was going away. I am left without money and debt. I have already calculated that after paying taxes and then alimony and child support, I will live like a beggar. I just said I was begging. As soon as I did, Rich joined me and we both ended up on our knees begging her. Why? If you had enough income to pay, Sylvia asked, you don't understand. Our monthly income wasn't that great. Mental income was boosted by bonuses, Bonnie said. Finally, after we begged for a few minutes, physically, on our knees, Sue said, that they would not appeal. But when dividing up property, they were tough. I wanted to take my jewelry, but Rob insisted that I take 20% of the furniture, and he kept some of the jewelry. They said we can't choose what we take. Bonnie did the same to Rich. He had more possessions, but she insisted that part of what he was taking was furniture. We didn't want that. We would have to pay for transportation and storage. They were grinning like devils, watching our attempts to negotiate. They had their own answer to each of our suggestions. In other words, they've cornered us. Our 20% allowed us to keep our cars, but not much else. Those 20% killed us. I had just received my salary at work, but in order to get my jewelry and not pay for moving and storing furniture I didn't need, I had to give Rob most of my money. Rich was forced to give his boat to the children, but kept 2 Rolex watches and a collection of music. Initially, he planned to offer them to sell most of the things and just split the money. 80-20 THS. But after Sue's demands to kiss her ass or something, he was demoralized. She played with him like we left, feeling like complete losers. It was a terrible feeling. Well, you had a rent-free apartment. I'm sure it helped you survive, Sylvia said. Well, yes, we were hoping to get back on our feet, but the company we worked for found out about everything. They were unhappy that we used it for a couple of years and then began to live in it full time. In itself, this would not be such a big problem. We have been a very productive affiliate, but the company's auditors also questioned our bonuses. We were short of several employees, and this allowed us to free up some money. But Rich redirected the extra money that our branch was spending on other needs to the bonus account. And while all the employees received bonuses, he and I received large bonuses. It wasn't illegal, but it violated company rules. We were offered to resign. If we were fired, our chances of returning to the insurance business would be 0. We would have had to leave anyway. As it turned out, Agnosto Shipping offered us positions, and we are very happy to be here. Well, we are glad that we have you. Rich is doing a great job and Tony is very happy with his work. And as I said, you made a serious impression on me. I like you. Both of you will probably see a promotion soon. Now, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I want you to quietly tell Rich that if he ever wants to play with our money quickly and freely, as he did with that last company, we won't be happy. Oh no, Bonnie said, we would not like to risk dismissal. Getting fired will be the least of your problems. Sylvia said, giggling. I would insist that you give me back every cent plus interest. For 36 years old and several kids, you have a great body and you're pretty. But I don't think you're going to like spending evenings and weekends running around the block. And panties and fishnet stockings. If you understand me, and I know Rich will be upset messing around in the closet with cleaning supplies. Now let's go back to the office. I'm glad I'll be driving. Those 40 okers seem to have kicked your ass. The epilogue. Rob threw a can of beer in the trash and thought about his options. It's been 5 months since he broke up with Bonnie. His divorce wouldn't be final for another 30 days. And he couldn't bring himself to make love until he was a bachelor. It was a tough moral issue for him, but he just couldn't bring himself to even date until he was single. When word spread through the hospital that his marriage was falling apart, the pretty, divorced senior nurse at the maternity ward, Jennifer Browsard, made it clear that she was not only free, but also interested. The previous weekend, Rob had invited her and her 2 children to a barbecue. After the meal, they had a nice conversation, while Deirdre and Jason took Jen's 2 children to the bay to catch bream. Handing out fishing rods to small children, Jason caught his father's eye and gave him a thumbs up. Maybe it's time for me to stop listening to these audio recordings and get on with my life, Rob thought, touching the icon on his tablet to delete the app.